You've both been entrepreneurs before you actually started Under the Weather. Share with me and the rest of us, if you would, what have been some of the challenges that you've faced in, number one, starting a business, but more importantly, maybe even managing that business so that it's successful?
I'll let you go first, Kelly.
Well, geez. I mean, it's a long list.
That's okay.
I think just as an entrepreneur, some of the most difficult things are finding good talent, keeping ahead of your business. One of the biggest challenges I found when I had my marketing firm, and still with this business today, is finding time to work on my business, not in it. And I think as an entrepreneur, if you have a really great idea, it's really easy to get stuck into the good idea, but not really going at the top level and running a business effectively. So I would say from a long term, that was always a challenge of mine and still is.
Rick, what do you think?
I agree with Kelly about it's hard to find good people to work, but more importantly, as an entrepreneur, and Kelly will attest to this, as will my accountant out there, I have my hard time taking my hands off of things and letting other people take over and do things that they're capable of doing. I've tried to get better about that. But one reason I became an entrepreneur is I want freedom. I like freedom. I like to earn money, and I like to be responsible for how much money I'm making. So before I started my business originally, 25 years ago, I was a commission salesman, and some point in the year, I was told, great job, you're doing a great job, you've maxed out your commission. And I'm like, what does that mean? So from then on, I said, well, I want to be in charge of maxing out my commission. And that's how I decided to get into business originally.
Were you making more than the person you reported to?
Definitely not. Definitely not. And
I've heard stories where that happens, and
Yeah.
they don't like it, so they say go somewhere else.
Well, you're right, and nowadays in sales, like if it's done correctly, that can certainly happen because the salespeople, without the salespeople, the other things in the company aren't going to be able to happen. Now, there's two ways to put it. The back office has to be able to fulfill what you sell, but really selling whatever you do, selling it. You're always selling. You don't sell something, there's nothing to do.
Either one of you could address this. What do you think really are some very important characteristics of an entrepreneur?
I would say first and foremost, you have to be a risk taker. You have to be willing to take risks. And secondly, you have to work hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard work.
Is that a gambling risk, or is that a risk that you've done a little bit of, let's say, prerequisite study about what it's going to take to be successful in that business?
To me, it's a gambling risk.
Okay.
Because if I find something I, number one, enjoy, I try to find a way to make some money at it. Sometimes, usually for me, it's worked in some form or another, maybe not making as much as I'd wanted to or needed to, but to me, it's certainly a gamble, but you got to find something you enjoy. So that's how it always started with me.
Okay.
I mean, this was a very, when Rick spent a couple years developing this product and popped it up in the kitchen, and the kids made fun of him, and our kids' parents made fun of him, and finally he said, I think this is a decent idea, and I said, I think it is too. He ordered 5,000.
Well, when we first, that's a risk.
That was a huge risk.
I misunderstood the lady in China about what the minimum
That's another
order was.
story.
But imagine, and I was, mid-40s at the time, I guess, showing up at my kids' soccer game, and they were at the age of, at that time, 10 and 16. And I'm sitting in one of these bubbles on the side of the soccer field. You can imagine how they thought, and then my kid's soccer coach rolled toilet paper over to me. And so my kids were embarrassed, but that being said, I was warm. I was warm. I was real warm, and nobody walked by me without making a comment. And it was usually a positive, like, man, I'm jealous. So I, start let people sit in it, and so ironically, I was in the midst of selling my old business, and as Kelly mentioned, I ordered 5,000 because, and I don't know if I misunderstood or I was told wrong, but the container held certain amounts. I said, well, we'll get the minimum. But in any event, I got them,
Factory trick.
and they sat in the warehouse for a long time, and literally in January of 14, I was just frustrated. We were selling maybe 4 of them a month, right? Because we weren't really marketing them, and I had worked out a deal with a guy in Seattle who wanted to buy all my inventory, and I was going to sell them to him at my cost, and I was going to even finance it for him. And he got cold feet. What a dumb, well, in any event, because right in the midst of all that, Kelly said, no, you're not doing it. We're at least selling what you got. So she got involved, and in March of 14, she got our Facebook rolling, and she went to New York and stood out in the cold, I think, at the Today Show. And somebody from Oklahoma bought like 8 of them. And then the next month we sold 400, and then we sold 1,000, and the numbers started going up from there, and it became fun because, no one had seen this type of product before. So there were a lot of stories, and people were sending in pictures, and it became fun.
So obviously one of the things you have to do is differentiate yourself from anything that's out there. Now, would you consider yourselves being the first mover with this particular product?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, a funny story, when we first got our warehouse, we were operating originally temporarily out of our sports complex, and we would literally pick up boxes of product based on what we sold, bring them to the volleyball court.
I bought an old tennis club when I sold my last business, converted to an indoor sports complex. That was going to be my new living. And then she got this thing taken off. So I had to get rid of it. Well, I didn't get rid of that. I still got it if anyone wants a sports club.
Anyway, so we were fulfilling out of there, and I forget the question that you just asked. What did you just ask me?
Basically about competition, being a first mover.
Right. So to make a long story short, when we moved into our warehouse, we were behind. We had accidentally sold product we didn't have because our inventory and our website wasn't set up correctly. And we had to spend days calling customers, and we were nervous every morning.
A couple thousand.
He had a company where he was selling basically a commodity, and I was in advertising, so we were like, oh God, we have to call these customers and tell them that they can't have a blue, but maybe could they take a red? And all day long we would call, and they would say, yeah, great, thank you. And it took
they weren't
us
upset.
about 2 weeks before we had the epiphany, they can't get this anyplace else. Like we have this product that they can't get anywhere else. And so we
They'll
were,
take what you have.
the guy at Dick's, when we first met with Dick's, he said something, it was also an epiphany, and it was a great feeling when he said it. And we got in the car and it was like, did you hear what he said? He said, you created a new category in outdoor sports. And we
Wow.
never actually recognized that until someone at Dick's pointed it out to us. And then, we said, God, he's right. This is a new category.
Right. So where is the product available now? Obviously it's available online, but you've got a pretty widespread distribution now, as I understand it.
Well, so we sell all the products on our own website. Then we have Costco was selling a specific product.
Okay.
Dick's sells a specific product, and about half our line is available on Amazon right now. And they actually buy from us, so we don't sell through them. They buy it from us. Knock on wood, we've been contacted by most retailers you can imagine. The problem we've had is we're very big into quality, and it's almost like, there's a zillion factories in China and everyone wants to make it, but I've had samples come in that leak. I've had samples that come in that the stitching doesn't stay together, so we're real particular. So we try to control our distribution because there's only so much we can.
Very intentional. We very intentionally have one product, one variation. If the one on the far right is our original pod, that's what Dick's sells. That's all they sell. Costco the same. Another very large retailer is rolling out a private label. I guess it's not technically, it's by Under the Weather, but it's
Right,
going to
in
be
the
their own.
springtime.
But we do that because, you know, the sales channel, our margin is way larger with direct sales.
Sure,
So, of course,
understand.
we want to drive as many sales as we can to our website. So if someone goes on Amazon and says, oh, I don't really want an XL and I don't want an original, then they get on our website and then they might want something bigger. And so our hope is to continue to drive people to our website.
So, you know, what advice might you give to, let's say, many of the people here tonight are students, all right? What advice might you give them in terms of their desire, passion? They got that, you know, they've got that inner feeling that I really want to be an entrepreneur, you know, at some point. What kind of advice might you give them?
There's nothing better. I mean, but it's...
You
listen,
will work very hard.
But for folks that are students, right, for the younger students here that don't necessarily have a family yet, this is the best time for you, because believe me, when you get kids, everything changes. But the great thing about it is that you control your destiny. And listen, believe me, we work a hell of a lot of hours. Like, I'm on the phone a lot of nights from midnight to 3:30 in the morning with China. And I'm not a morning person, so if I get to work at 9 or 9:30, that's fine. She likes to get up early. But being an entrepreneur is the best thing, but if you're successful at it, people will come out of the holes and copy everything you do, and that's frustrating.
So do you think, because I teach entrepreneurship, now having been in the real world for a lot of years, you know, I'm able to bring some real world experience to the classroom. Do you think entrepreneurship can be taught? There's a lot of controversy about that, you know. I do my best to try to help students understand the challenges, the difficulty, the commitment, the passion, all those things you really need to be successful as an entrepreneur. And when I was in school, there was no such thing as an entrepreneurship course. But there's an awful lot of interest now in students because they recognize in the world today, going to work for let's say, a Fortune 500 company is probably not something that they long-term really want to do. Mm-hmm. So, but is gaining experience, let's say, working for somebody else for a period of time, important, maybe to help understand what it takes to be an entrepreneur?
That was very important to me to make me realize I didn't want to work for somebody else.
Yeah.
And that happened very
Exactly.
quickly out of college. I mean, I was 21 when I graduated college. By the time I was 22, I had left that job and I said, this is not for me. To me, every 3-year-old should be an entrepreneur because they're really doing what they want, right? A 3-year-old can be doing one thing 1 second, then they want to do something else. That's really the mentality you have to have. And the only difference is when you grow up, you have to make sure that you can afford to live doing those different things.
I think that real work experience is absolutely imperative. I don't think our business would have succeeded had Rick and I not had the experience, the 20 years experience we had previous. And in my case, you know, I handle the brand and the marketing. And after having had an advertising agency for 20 years and working at other marketing firms previous to that on national brands, there are things that I knew not to do that I would have probably done had I not known better. One of them would be discounting. You know, when you don't sell a lot of product in 2 years and half of your life savings is, you know, in that product, your first instinct is to just lower the price and get rid of them. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't do it, and I've always pushed for us not to discount our product. We try to focus mainly on value-added promotions when we do them. Had I not had the experience I had, and frankly it was with working with other, you know, national retail kind of clients, I might not have known to do that. You know, there were a lot of mistakes we would have made. Legal, patent, if we didn't have the background that we had and the experience we had.
So Kelly, you mentioned branding. You know, how important is that to be successful as an entrepreneur? any business for that matter.
Well, I can tell you that brand equity is probably the most valuable thing an entrepreneur can have, because if you want to either grow your business or sell it, think about Yeti. You know, like you're buying a whatever, however, I don't know how expensive it is, a few $100s for a cooler because it has the Yeti brand name on it. That's brand equity. And what we have is, and what we worked really hard on, is developing that brand equity. And that meant sometimes, in many instances, not having as great of a margin, not selling as many, but maintaining, you know, the equity of the brand. But that's all we have that's saleable. When we look online, if you Google under the weather tonight,
Yeah, what does under the weather mean?
feeling bad.
Not you. Anybody out here, what is typically what does under the
That's-
weather mean to you?
Well, you know, that's an interesting, yeah, that's an interesting comment, because when I'm feeling bad, I'm feeling under the weather.
There you go.
So it's almost like a generic, it could be a generic name.
Well, if you
got to be
Google
careful
under the
about
weather,
that.
where I was going with this is, you'll see that Target has under the weather, and you click on their website.
Well, they don't have under
carry
the
our
weather, they
product,
just buy the AdWords.
but they buy the word. Walmart does it, Bed Bath & Beyond does it. Lots of retailers buy under the weather, and they don't carry a product. And that's, to me, as a marketing person, I'm like, that's when
Is
you
that a
know you have-
license agreement you have
No.
with them?
No, it's an AdWords thing.
They're
Anybody
allowed
can buy
to do it, but if you go to
Okay.
Alibaba and you put in under the weather,
That's
you'll find a
another
million companies that don't make our product that have fake pictures of our product that are fakes.
No, they have our website pictures
Or
sometimes.
none of, or our website pictures, or not even our tents. They just know that people are Googling under the weather
So,
now.
you know, that's an annoying thing, but it does lay credence to what I'm saying, which is there is some equity in that brand name.
Yeah, so let's pursue that a little bit. So you don't really have any protection of the name, under the weather?
It's very interesting.
We do.
We have the trademark under the weather.
Okay.
Okay. However,
It's a registered trademark. Under the weather is registered trademark.
Okay.
just because you have something registered doesn't mean people aren't doing what when you
Yeah.
when you spend your $100,000 on your patents and trademarks and you think that's expensive, they forget to tell you how expensive it is if somebody copies it, because you're going to spend another $100,000, and the people that copied you, the worst thing that's going to happen in a long lawsuit is they would have to give their profits to you. That's the worst thing that happens.
Okay.
So it's really, it's very frustrating at
And
times.
legally, you have to defend your IP.
Yeah.
So we have no choice. If we don't defend it, then we lose it.
So kind of going back to your discussion about having your product made overseas, in China in particular, are you selling the product internationally now?
We are.
Okay.
We are, but we're looking actually to perhaps, if not make it domestically, at least assemble it domestically.
And we have a great, the first factory we've worked with her, and Rick had a long relationship with that factory for 20 years. You
Maybe
know,
not that long, but 10 years.
well,
yeah.
through your previous company. And it's been a great relationship. I mean, you know, so I don't want to say that it's all bad. We have been very fortunate, and she has been, that factory is a great partner for us and always has been, and so, you know, we've had some good relationships there too.
You know, it's an
You just always
interesting.
want to, like, you can't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
So it's not that we aren't happy with what we have, but we're always having to look for other
Well,
ways
there's
to
also
develop
reasons
products.
if you manufacture in the U.S. There's people that want USA
Right.
products. Sometimes they
Yeah.
want USA products until they realize they can't afford a USA product.
Yeah. Has the implementation of tariffs at all impacted your business?
Okay, so
Is that a sore topic? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, right now.
I
So,
don't know.
so that hasn't hit us yet, but what did hit us when I designed this product, so I don't know if you understand, but when you import something, the bottom line is this: the U.S. government doesn't want to lose products, so if there's something that's brought in from overseas and a lot of people are bringing it in and importing it, and we're losing jobs in the U.S., the government will tax those items so the government so some of that money stays here. When I designed this product, let me put it like this: a tent, there's a 9% duty that you have to pay for. So if I pay $1 for something, I have to pay it extra 9 cents to the US government if I pay for it in China. But I designed a product called a backpacker tent that ironically, that one particular item has 0 duty because there was some lawsuit 30 years ago that made hiking and backpacking a sport, an official sport, and for whatever reason, a backpacker tent became non-duty. You don't have to pay tax. Well, a month ago, I got a letter from Customs that they're questioning whether my tent is actually a backpacker tent. And when I say they question it, what they're saying is, we don't think it is, so now you're paying 9%.
And retroactively.
And they're going retroactive. So I get a bill
nice.
for $200,000 from the government.
goodness.
Now I can oppose that, which I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But I had a conversation with, this is a lady in our own country, our own U.S. Customs. She's like, I disagree, it's a backpacker point. So I gave her all kinds of materials to convince her, you're not going to convince me, it's just not a backpacker.
It's an arbitrary
and I
decision.
said, ma'am, have you ever been backpacking? And I was nice about it. She said, no, that doesn't interest me. I said, fair enough, but how can you make the decision? Well, I just don't think you can really sleep well in that thing. And I said, well, first of all, if you're sleeping in it, you're not backpacking. And on top of that, you can, number one, we have different sizes, so you can sleep in it. Also, with a tent like this, you can lay it on its back and you can sleep in it. So now we got to spend money, and who pays eventually? The customers have to pay that money.
Right,
it's very
through.
frustrating.
We have run out of time. We could spend more time with Kelly and Rick, but they've been very generous for the time they've given us tonight. A lot of good insights. Let's give them a real UC Blue Ash round of applause.